Picture this. A young man in Brooklyn is sitting in his tiny apartment, staring at an overdue rent notice on the table. His bank account is nearly empty, and the job applications he's sent out haven't led anywhere. He feels like he's out of options. But instead of giving in to despair, he grabs a notebook and writes at the top of the page, "What would the most successful version of me do right now?" That one question changes everything. He starts writing ideas. He thinks differently. And within a few months, he's working a side hustle that turns into a business. Within a few years, he's not only paying rent, he's buying property. What shifted wasn't the economy, or luck, or some miracle. It was the way he thought. This is the secret most people miss. Success doesn't begin with money, talent, or connections. It begins in the mind. The way you think about problems, opportunities, and even yourself shapes the life you live. The difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck isn't always skill, it's mindset. And today, we're diving into how successful people think differently, and how you can rewire your thinking to unlock the same results. Here's something powerful. Successful people don't see the world through the same lens as everyone else. Where most people see obstacles, they see possibilities. Where most people complain, they look for solutions. Where others hesitate in fear, they move forward with courage. Think about Oprah Winfrey. She grew up in poverty, faced unimaginable hardships, and was told by society that someone with her background had no chance. But instead of accepting those limits, she trained her mind to see opportunities in every challenge. That way of thinking didn't just help her survive. It turned her into one of the most influential women in the world. Now let's be real. Failure is something most people run from. The moment they fail once, they say, "This isn't for me. I'm not good enough." But successful people think about failure differently. They don't see it as the end of the road. They see it as feedback. Thomas Edison, when asked about his thousands of failed attempts at inventing the light bulb, famously said, "I didn't fail. I just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That mindset, seeing failure as progress instead of defeat, is the reason he succeeded where others gave up. The average mind says, "I failed." The successful mind says, "I learned." And that shift makes all the difference. There's also the way successful people think about the future. Most people live in what's called short-term mode. They want results today. They want comfort now. That's why people spend their paychecks the same week they get them, or give up on a fitness routine after 2 weeks. But successful people play a different game. They think in years, sometimes even decades. Jeff Bezos once said he makes business decisions based on what will matter 5 to 10 years from now, not tomorrow. That's why Amazon kept growing when others disappeared. When you start thinking like that, you begin to act differently. You stop asking, "What feels good right now?" and start asking, "What will get me where I want to be in 5 years?" That's a completely different mindset. Here's another story. Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, was selling fax machines door to door in Florida. She kept getting rejected. Most people would have quit. But here's the twist. Every night at dinner, her father would ask her not what she succeeded at, but what she failed at that day. And if she hadn't failed, he'd be disappointed. That trained her to think of failure as something to celebrate, because it meant she was trying. That mental training allowed her to keep pushing when others quit. Eventually, she turned a simple idea, cutting the feet off her pantyhose, into a billion-dollar company. That's not just business brilliance. That's thinking differently. And it doesn't stop there. Successful people also think differently about themselves. Many people are trapped in self-doubt. They tell themselves, "I'm not smart enough. I'm not ready. I don't have what it takes." But successful people flip the script. They might feel fear and insecurity, but instead of saying, "I can't," they ask, "How can I?" That tiny shift opens the door to possibilities. Take Michael Jordan. He was cut from his high school basketball team. That could have broken him. But instead of believing he wasn't good enough, he used it as fuel. He trained harder, thought bigger, and redefined what was possible. His success wasn't just about talent. It was about refusing to let a limiting belief define him. And maybe the most important difference of all, successful people think differently about other people. Average minds look at someone else's success and feel envy. They say, "Why them? Why not me?" Successful minds see the same thing and say, "If they can do it, that means it's possible. What can I learn from them?" Instead of letting comparison destroy their confidence, they use it as motivation. That's why successful people surround themselves with achievers. They know environment shapes mindset, and mindset shapes destiny. As Jim Rohn famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." Successful people take that seriously, and they choose their circle wisely. So let's bring it back to you. Right now, your life is shaped by your thoughts. The way you think about failure, about the future, about yourself, and about others is either moving you closer to success or keeping you stuck where you are. But the incredible news is this: thinking is a skill. It can be trained. You can learn to reframe failure, play the long game, believe before you see, and draw inspiration instead of envy. Successful people aren't born with a special kind of brain. They've simply practiced a special way of thinking. And if you start practicing that same way of thinking today, your future self will look back at this moment as the turning point. The moment you decided to stop thinking small and start thinking like the successful. Think about this for a second. Every great success story in America starts with someone who thought differently than the crowd. When everyone else said, "That's impossible," they quietly believed, "I'll find a way." That belief is what separates dreamers from achievers. And one of the most powerful ways successful people think differently is in how they handle fear. Most people let fear stop them. They want to start a business, but fear failure. They want to speak up in a meeting, but fear rejection. They want to pursue their dream, but fear what people will say. But successful people? They feel the fear just like everyone else, yet they move forward anyway. They understand that fear is not a stop sign. It's a green light telling you that what's on the other side is worth it. Take Elon Musk as an example. When he invested nearly all his money into Tesla and SpaceX, critics laughed. They said he was crazy. Both companies were on the brink of collapse. He could have walked away, saved his money, and lived a comfortable life. But he leaned into fear. He thought, if it fails, I'll still learn. If it works, it will change the world. That kind of thinking terrifies most people. But that's why he's building rockets and electric cars while others are still playing it safe. Here's the truth. Successful people have trained their minds to see fear as evidence that they're on the right track. If it doesn't scare them a little, it's probably not big enough. Average thinking says, "I'm scared, so I should stop." Successful thinking says, "I'm scared, so I must keep going." But let's go deeper. It's not just fear. It's also about responsibility. Most people blame circumstances for where they are. They say, "I can't succeed because of the economy, because of my boss, because of my family situation." But successful people flip that completely. They take full responsibility for their lives. Even when something isn't their fault, they ask, "What can I do about it? How can I turn this around?" There's a powerful story about Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks. He grew up in a poor family in Brooklyn. His father worked low-paying jobs with no health insurance. When his father broke his ankle, the family had no safety net. Schultz could have blamed his circumstances and accepted a life of struggle. But instead, he thought differently. He took responsibility for shaping a better future. Later, when he built Starbucks, he gave employees health benefits and stock options, even part-time workers. Why? Because he had trained his mind not to complain about the past, but to create solutions for the future. That's responsibility-driven thinking. And here's something that might surprise you. Successful people think differently about time. While most people waste hours scrolling social media, binge-watching shows, or complaining about Mondays, successful people treat time like their most valuable currency. They know money can be lost and regained, but time never comes back. Every hour wasted is gone forever. That's why they schedule their days with intention. They read when others scroll. They plan when others procrastinate. They wake up early not because it's trendy, but because they understand every extra hour compounds into results over time. Think about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He wakes up before dawn to hit the gym, long before the cameras are rolling or the scripts are being read. Why? Because he knows those hours matter. He knows discipline builds results. Successful thinking is about using time as an investment, not a distraction. Now, let's talk about the way successful people think about growth. Many people believe success is about reaching a destination, the dream job, the dream car, the dream house. But successful people see growth as the destination. They don't stop learning once they graduate. They don't stop improving once they get the promotion. They see life as an endless classroom. Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world, is known for reading around 50 books a year. Warren Buffett spends about 80% of his day reading and thinking. Why? Because they understand that the moment you stop learning, you stop growing. And when you stop growing, you start falling behind. But here's the twist. Successful people don't just consume information. They apply it. The average person reads a book and says, "That was interesting." A successful person reads a book and asks, "How can I use this today?" That's a huge difference in thinking. Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. And then there's how they think about comfort. Most people chase comfort like it's the ultimate prize. They want the soft couch, the easy path, the predictable routine. But successful people know comfort is the enemy of growth. They deliberately step into discomfort because they know that's where transformation happens. Athletes push their bodies beyond exhaustion. Entrepreneurs take risks with no guarantee of reward. Artists face rejection over and over before their work is recognized. None of that is comfortable, but it's necessary. Remember the story of J.K. Rowling? She was a single mother living on welfare, writing Harry Potter in coffee shops while her baby slept beside her. She faced dozens of rejections from publishers. It wasn't comfortable, but she embraced that discomfort because her vision was stronger than her fear. And today, her books have inspired millions. That's the power of thinking differently about comfort. And let's not forget the way successful people think about impact. Most people think only about themselves, their bills, their needs, their happiness. But successful people expand their thinking to include others. They ask, how can I serve? How can I create something that makes life better for people? That's why Steve Jobs didn't just create a phone. He created a device that changed how billions of people live, work, and connect. Successful thinking isn't selfish. It's expansive. It looks for ways to add value to the world. Here's the part you need to remember. Every single shift in thinking we've talked about, from fear to responsibility, from time to growth, from comfort to impact, is available to you. These aren't magical powers only a few are born with. They are choices. Choices you can make daily. Choices that compound into a mindset. And that mindset shapes your future. Because at the end of the day, the biggest difference between people who succeed and people who don't is not their intelligence, not their background, not their resources. It's how they think. Here's a powerful truth. Successful people don't just think differently about failure, fear, or growth. They also think differently about opportunities. Most people wait for the perfect chance, the perfect timing, the perfect situation. They think, when everything lines up, then I'll take action. But successful people know the perfect moment rarely comes. Instead of waiting, they create opportunities. They understand that action itself opens doors. Take the story of Damon John, founder of Fubu and one of the stars on Shark Tank. He started sewing hats and shirts in Queens, selling them on the street. He didn't have investors. He didn't have a factory. He didn't have connections in the fashion industry. But he had an idea and the willingness to act. He turned his mother's house into a makeshift factory, and his hustle attracted attention. Eventually, Fubu became a global brand. Damon John didn't sit around waiting for an opportunity to knock. He thought differently. I'll knock on opportunity's door until it opens. That's how successful people think. They act their way into opportunity. And here's another way their thinking sets them apart. They see abundance where others see scarcity. Many people live with a scarcity mindset, the belief that there's not enough success to go around. They think, if someone else wins, I lose. But successful people embrace an abundance mindset. They believe there's plenty of room for everyone to succeed. That's why they share ideas, mentor others, and collaborate instead of competing with everyone. They don't fear someone else's rise. They see it as proof that success is possible. Think about it. If Jeff Bezos had believed there was only room for one bookstore, Amazon would have never existed. If Netflix had believed Blockbuster's dominance meant there was no space left, they would have never transformed the entire entertainment industry. Abundance thinking opens your mind to innovation. Scarcity thinking locks you into limitation. Another big difference is how successful people think about change. Most people resist it. They cling to what's familiar, even when it's holding them back. But successful people expect change, and more importantly, they embrace it. They see change not as a threat, but as an opportunity to grow, adapt, and lead. Consider Netflix again. When they started, they were mailing DVDs to customers. That was their entire business model, but they didn't cling to it. They saw where technology was heading and shifted to streaming before anyone else. That bold move turned them from a DVD rental company into one of the most powerful entertainment platforms in the world. Change didn't scare them, it fueled them. That's how successful thinking works. Now, let's talk about vision. Average thinking is limited to what's right in front of you. But successful thinking looks years ahead, sometimes even generations ahead. Walt Disney is a perfect example. When he first pitched the idea of Disneyland, bankers and critics laughed. They couldn't see it. They said, "No one will ever spend money to walk around a park with cartoon characters." But Walt saw what they couldn't. He thought differently. He didn't just see a theme park. He saw a world of imagination that would inspire millions. Today, Disneyland isn't just a park. It's a symbol of vision brought to life. And here's something most people never realize. Successful people don't just think big, they think specifically. They don't just say, "I want to be successful someday." They define exactly what success looks like for them. They set clear goals, with timelines, with details. And they hold themselves accountable. That level of clarity is what keeps them moving forward when motivation fades. Let's bring in a modern example, Serena Williams. She didn't just dream about being a great tennis player. From a young age, she and her sister Venus were trained with the specific vision of becoming the best in the world. Her mindset was laser-focused, not vague. She thought like a champion before she ever became one. And when setbacks came, injuries, losses, criticism, her clear vision pulled her forward. That's how successful people think, with clarity, precision, and unwavering belief. But thinking differently isn't just about big dreams. It's also about small, daily choices. Most people underestimate the power of consistency. They think, one workout doesn't matter. One skipped day doesn't matter. One bad habit won't change much. But successful people think in terms of compound effect. They know small habits, repeated daily, create massive results over time. Think about financial investing. Someone who saves $10 a day might not see big results in a month or even a year. But over decades, that simple habit can turn into hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's compound growth. Successful people apply that same principle to every area of life. They think, every choice adds up. Every habit builds me or breaks me. That's why they value discipline over instant gratification. And here's another layer. Successful people think differently about criticism. Most people hate it. They avoid feedback because it hurts their pride. But successful people welcome it. They understand that criticism, when filtered wisely, is a tool for growth. Michael Jordan listened to every coach, every critique, and used it as fuel. Steve Jobs demanded feedback, even when it was uncomfortable, because he knew it pushed him to create better products. Successful thinking isn't fragile, it's resilient. Now let's talk about persistence. This is one of the most underrated ways successful people think differently. Most people quit too soon. They try once, fail, and walk away. But successful people have trained their minds to expect persistence to pay off. They understand that consistency beats intensity. A little progress every day beats a burst of effort once in a while. Take Colonel Harlan Sanders, the founder of KFC. He was rejected over 1,000 times before someone agreed to franchise his fried chicken recipe. Most people would have quit after a dozen rejections. But Sanders thought differently. If I keep going, eventually I'll find someone who believes in this. That persistence turned a simple recipe into a global empire. So let's bring it back to you. Imagine if you started thinking like this, seeing opportunities instead of waiting for them, embracing abundance instead of scarcity, welcoming change instead of fearing it, defining a clear vision instead of vague dreams, building small habits instead of chasing overnight success, and persisting no matter how many times you hear no. That shift in thinking could completely transform your life. Because here's the truth. Success isn't only about what you do. It's about what you believe, how you interpret the world, and how you choose to think every single day. Here's something most people never think about. The biggest battles successful people fight aren't out in the world. They're in their own minds. Every day, they face the same doubts, temptations, and negative thoughts as everyone else, but they respond differently. Where most people surrender to those voices, successful people train themselves to take control. Let's start with self-talk. The average person underestimates how powerful their inner voice is. They repeat things like, "I'm not good enough. I'll never make it. People like me don't succeed." Those words become a script, and eventually, they start living it out. But successful people write a different script. They use their inner voice to push forward, not hold back. Muhammad Ali, One of the greatest athletes of all time didn't just tell the world he was the greatest, he told himself over and over again until he believed it. His self-talk wasn't arrogance. It was training his mind to step into the identity he wanted. And once his mind believed it, his body followed. Another way they think differently is in how they handle rejection. Most people take rejection personally. They see it as proof they're not worthy. But successful people understand rejection is redirection. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper job because his editor said he lacked imagination. Imagine that. The man who would later create Mickey Mouse and Disney World was told he wasn't creative enough. Instead of letting that rejection define him, he used it as fuel to build something bigger. That mindset, to turn rejection into motivation, is what keeps successful people moving when others stop. And then there's resilience. Life throws punches at everyone. Illness, loss, financial setbacks, betrayal. No one is immune. The difference lies in how people respond. Successful thinkers don't deny pain, but they refuse to be defined by it. Take Bethany Hamilton, the professional surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack at just 13 years old. Most people would have quit, but she thought differently. This doesn't end my story. It's just a new chapter. She trained harder, adjusted her style, and went on to become a champion. That resilience is a mindset, and it's one anyone can choose. Now let's talk about how successful people think about responsibility for their emotions. Most people let their moods control them. If they wake up tired, the whole day is ruined. If someone criticizes them, their confidence collapses. But successful people don't hand over that kind of power. They take ownership of their emotions. They decide, I control my state of mind. That's why high performers often use routines, morning workouts, meditation, gratitude practices to set their mindset for the day. They don't wait to feel motivated. They create motivation through disciplined habits. Another fascinating difference is how successful people think about problems. Most people ask, why is this happening to me? That mindset makes them victims. Successful people ask, what is this teaching me? How can I grow from this? That question transforms problems into lessons. Take Thomas J. Watson, former CEO of IBM. He once said, the fastest way to succeed is to double your failure rate. He believed every problem was an opportunity to innovate. That mindset kept IBM at the cutting edge of technology for decades. And here's something deeply powerful. Successful people think differently about gratitude. Many assume gratitude is just about being polite or saying thank you. But for successful people, gratitude is a mindset strategy. They understand that focusing on what you already have shifts your brain from scarcity to abundance. Tony Robbins often says, you can't feel fear and gratitude at the same time. And it's true. Gratitude rewires your focus. Instead of thinking about what's missing, you start noticing what's possible. That shift keeps successful people optimistic even during tough times. Let's not forget persistence in the face of criticism. If you study anyone who's achieved greatness, you'll notice they were criticized heavily along the way. Jeff Bezos was mocked for years because Amazon wasn't profitable. People said it would collapse. Today, it's one of the biggest companies in the world. If Bezos had listened to the noise, Amazon wouldn't exist. Successful thinking requires tuning out the opinions that don't matter and staying locked in on the vision that does. Another key factor is how they think about risk. Most people see risk as something to avoid. Successful people see risk as something to manage. They don't gamble blindly, but they also don't cling to safety. They understand that the biggest risk is often doing nothing. Mark Zuckerberg once said, in a world that's changing really quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking risks. That kind of thinking is what allowed Facebook to scale from a dorm room project into a global platform. Here's another story to prove the point. Steve Jobs was fired from the very company he started. Most people would have been crushed forever. But Jobs thought differently. He said later, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Instead of wallowing in defeat, he built Next and Pixar, two companies that changed industries. Eventually, Apple brought him back, and the rest is history. That's what successful thinking looks like, turning a setback into a setup. Now let's flip the perspective. If successful people think differently about problems, risk, and failure, how do they think about success itself? Surprisingly, they don't see success as a finish line. Average thinking says, once I hit my goal, I'm done. But successful people see every achievement as a stepping stone. They celebrate, yes, but they immediately ask, what's next? How can I grow bigger, serve more, or create further impact? That's why the most successful people rarely retire in the traditional sense. They may slow down, but they keep creating, building, and dreaming because their mindset isn't about arrival, it's about evolution. Take LeBron James. He's already considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Most people in his position would just coast. But his thinking is different. He invests millions every year into his body, his training, and his recovery so he can keep performing at the highest level. Off the court, he builds schools, businesses, and foundations. He doesn't stop because he reached success. He expands because he sees success as ongoing responsibility. And that's really the heart of it. Successful people think differently because they see life as a journey of constant growth, not a single destination. Every setback, every risk, every rejection, every opportunity becomes fuel for the next step forward. So here's the question. How will you start thinking differently? Will you let rejection break you, or use it to sharpen you? Will you wait for motivation, or create it? Will you fear risk, or manage it? Will you treat success as an ending, or as the beginning of something bigger? Because the truth is, the mindset you choose determines the life you live. Here's a question to think about. What separates those who only dream from those who actually achieve? The answer isn't always intelligence, money, or connections. More often than not, it's how they think about persistence and consistency. Successful people understand something the average person overlooks. Greatness is rarely built in a single moment. It's built in the small, quiet, often unnoticed decisions that compound over time. Most people give up too soon. They expect quick results. If they don't see progress in a week or a month, they quit. But successful people think differently. They see success as a marathon, not a sprint. They understand that persistence isn't glamorous, but it's powerful. Think about Stephen King. Before becoming one of the world's most famous authors, he was rejected over 30 times for his first novel, Carrie. He even threw the manuscript in the trash. But his wife pulled it out and encouraged him to try again. That persistence paid off. The book launched his career and built a legacy. Imagine if he had quit at rejection number 29. That's the difference in thinking. Successful people keep going when others stop. And it's not just persistence in work, it's persistence in belief. Average thinking says, I'll believe it when I see it. Successful thinking says, I'll see it because I believe it. That belief creates a kind of resilience that keeps them moving even when the evidence isn't there yet. Think about Colonel Harlan Sanders, the man behind KFC. He was 65 years old, broke, and rejected by over 1,000 restaurants before someone finally believed in his fried chicken recipe. He thought differently. It only takes one yes. That mindset turned him into a global icon. Successful people also think differently about learning. Most people stop learning once they leave school. They think education ends with a diploma. But successful people know education is lifelong. They see every failure, every book, every conversation as a chance to learn something new. Take Bill Gates. Despite being one of the richest men in the world, he still reads around 50 books every year. Why? Because he knows knowledge compounds. The more you learn, the more you can innovate, adapt, and stay ahead. Average minds consume entertainment. Successful minds consume education. Here's another powerful shift. Successful people think differently about energy. They don't just protect their time, they protect their focus. Most people allow distractions to run their lives. Social media, notifications, gossip, endless scrolling. But successful people know focus is the new superpower. Warren Buffett once said, "The difference between successful people and really successful people is that really successful people say no to almost everything." That's a mindset shift. Instead of scattering their energy, they concentrate it. They know that every yes to something unimportant is a no to something that matters. And when it comes to money, successful people think differently there too. Many people see money as something to spend. They work for it, then use it to buy comfort, status, or instant gratification. But successful people see money as a tool for freedom, growth, and impact. They invest instead of just spending. They build assets instead of only chasing paychecks. They think long-term, understanding that money grows when it's planted, not when it's consumed. That's why people like Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, teach financial literacy as the key to independence. It's not about how much you make. It's about how you think about what you make. Let's bring in another story. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx. She started with just $5,000 in savings. Most people would have been too scared to risk it. But she thought differently. She believed in her vision, trusted her persistence, and invested her limited resources strategically. Today, she's a billionaire. That's not luck. That's mindset applied to money, risk, and persistence. And here's a mindset most people miss. Successful people think differently about failure stories. Instead of hiding them, they share them. They use vulnerability as strength. Why? Because they know authenticity builds trust. Average people hide their mistakes out of shame. Successful people reveal them to inspire others. That's why so many entrepreneurs on Shark Tank openly talk about the businesses that failed before the one that succeeded. They're not ashamed of failure. They see it as part of the process. Another key mindset is ownership. Most people make excuses. They say, I didn't succeed because of my boss, my family, the economy, bad luck. But successful people take ownership, even when something isn't their fault. They ask, what could I have done differently? How can I adjust for next time? That mindset keeps them growing while others stay stuck. Remember this, excuses feel good in the moment, but they rob you of power. Ownership may feel heavy, but it gives you control. And successful people never give away control of their future. Now, let's talk about vision again, but on a personal level. Most people think success is about getting there, the dream job, the dream car, the dream house. But successful people see success as a direction, not a destination. They think about the legacy they want to leave, not just the lifestyle they want to live. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just fight for civil rights because it was his career. He thought in terms of impact for future generations. That kind of thinking is what changes the world. And finally, successful people think differently about gratitude and giving. Average thinking says, when I'm rich, then I'll give back. Successful thinking says, I can give something right now. They understand that generosity isn't about how much money you have. It's about how much heart you put into it. LeBron James built the I Promise school for underprivileged kids long before his playing career was over. Why? Because he knows success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about what you give. So let's tie this together. Successful people think differently about persistence, belief, learning, energy, money, ownership, vision, and giving. These aren't abstract concepts, they're practical choices. Every day, you have the option to think small or think big, to make excuses or take ownership, to give up early or persist until it pays off. The difference is in your mindset. Because at the end of the day, success doesn't come to those who wait for the perfect opportunity. It comes to those who create it, persist through it, and think differently enough to see what others miss.